Okay, so in this lecture we are going to create a new project, and to do that we have an engine version installed, so in this case Unreal Engine 5, and I can click launch, or what I can do is I can click this drop down and I can create a shortcut on the desktop, right? I can double click on that on the desktop then, or as I mentioned I can launch this here from the Epic Games launcher. I can set that current, make that the current engine, and then that will change up here. Click this, and you can also change the current engine version here as well. And that is handy because if I switch to a different tab, such as the Marketplace tab for example, again I can now launch the editor without having to be in the library. And as I mentioned, we can create a shortcut on the desktop as well if we want to do that. And I can just double click on that. This will now load. And the Unreal Engine project browser will show up. We can double click an existing project to open that up, or right click to show in folder, and we can create different sorts of projects here. We can click to create a game for example, or a film or live event project, but again we are focused here on games. Then we have a couple of options. We can select to create a blank project, or we can choose from a variety of templates. The templates are a starting point and contain pre-made assets. They may contain animation, input may already be set up for you. They may include sample scenes and so on. And you can choose to create a first person shooter game, a third person, a top-down game, a vehicle game, and so on. Now it's important to note that a project is not the same as a game. The project is basically a workspace or a folder that ties everything together. All of the folders and assets such as your blueprint script, your 3D assets and materials, and so on. And the engine allows us to then create a game. That is how we want levels to play out within an editor, a visual editor. And when we are ready, we can basically bake out a game from those assets. So again, a bit of a difference there between a project and an actual game. Of course, there's also a difference between the engine, such as Unreal Engine, for example, or Unity, and your actual game that you will eventually bake out or publish. And that is because an engine basically runs or powers your game. It is the rendering technology and also a set of tools that allows us to build and piece or puzzle together the actual game that we want to play. So again, just a difference there. For your first project, we'll select first person, and then you can choose which type of project you want to create. Blueprint and C++ is going to refer to how you want to implement the logic for your game, for example, for your project. Blueprint is the visual scripting system in Unreal Engine. And then of course we also have the C++ language that we can use to develop on, and you can use a combination of both. You can also start with a Blueprint project and convert it to a C++ project later on. You can choose the target platform between desktop and mobile. The target platform basically refers to what you are targeting your game to actually run on once you build and ship your game. So do you want that to run on a console, a desktop, a mobile device? And then you can also choose the quality preset, which is the options being maximum and scalable. Maximum is for high-end desktop or console games or projects, and then scalable of course is going to be for mobile devices. Then you can decide if you want to include starter content. The starter content package is going to include some simple static meshes and also a couple of maps or levels as they are called in Unreal Engine. And this is to help you get up and running with the engine or to experiment and to learn how to work with the assets and so on. Then you can also decide to enable ray tracing if you want, if you have a graphics card that supports that. Ray tracing is a rendering technique that is going to simulate the lighting of a scene. That is a scene and the objects that are in that scene. The goal is to render, or in other words produce an image that is physically accurate or believable by rendering physically accurate, in other words realistic reflections, shadows, and indirect lighting. So in other words, lights that bounce off of other things. You can see the colors coming off of the walls, for example, or the ceiling, reflections in things such as water and so forth. So again, if you have a modern graphics card that supports ray tracing and you want that to be enabled for your project, then you can select that. We're not concerned with that for this project. And then you can go and choose where you want the project location to be, and then you can give it a name. Now with the name, I would like to mention that if you use something like an asterisk or a // for example, you will get this error here. The project may not contain slash or backslash. The project name must begin with an alphabetic character. So you cannot have a 1, for example, a numeric value. Also notice that the project name must not be longer than 20 characters. Now we'd like to mention that you can use the underscore, and that is often used to separate things out. But again, if you try and use that to begin your project name with, you will get an error again. Okay, but it's fine to use it in the case where you want to separate things out like that. But if again you want to use a special character, such as an asterisk, or a vertical bar or something like that, then again you will get an error. So avoid special characters, start your project name with a alphabetic character, use underscores where that is logical to separate things out, and numbers can also, the project name can contain numbers but not start with a number, alright? So with that, I'll just go and click create. And that will now open up the level editor. I'll just bring that up. It'll open up in the level editor. This is the editor and the window that we'll spend most of our time in. It says here the project file is out of date. I'll just click update and that's fine. Okay, so we'll discuss the UI in a bit more detail in upcoming lectures, but for right now I just want to continue discussing project creation. I can bring back the project browser by going to File, and then I can go and click New Project, for example, Open Project, Recent Project. I'll just click on Open Project, and then I have this Open Project window, and then I also have this right here, Always Load Last Project on Startup. And actually I'm just going to cancel here, and I'm going to close this off, and I'm going to double click to open the engine again. You don't really have to do this on your side. I just want to show you some of the options that you have. Okay, so that is going to bring up the Unroll Project Browser again. So what I like to do is I like to right click on the project and show that in the Explorer. And I'll just bring that up for you. So we do not have a .exe file that you might run when you are, for example, running a game. Double click on some .exe such as Tomb Raider.exe or something like that. What we have instead is a project folder with content and so on. Then what you want to do to open up that project is you want to click on or select the .u project. That is the extension that you are looking for, .u project. So again, you can double click on this to open up the project as well. And of course that will open up the level editor again, and now you can start working. And if you want to play your level, you can click here. And then you want to click in the viewport. That is where your game is. You will see you have hands over here. Just left click in there. Now that we are in the game, I can use the WASD keys as you would in a first-person shooter to move around. I can walk over this weapon to pick it up, and I can press the left mouse button to fire off some projectiles. I can also press F11 to maximize that window, that gameplay window, and press F11 again to minimize that, and I can press escape to stop playing the game. Okay, getting back to projects, I just wanted to mention, if I go to File, Open Project again, I can check this, always load the last project on startup, and then I can actually cancel, because if I go into that again, that should stay there. Right, so what does that mean? Well, if I close off the editor now, and I'll just close this here, we're done with that. And you can check it here as well, but if I close this, let's see if that stays. And as you can see, that now loads this game. That will now load our project because I checked that option. Always load the last project on startup. And this is where you can uncheck that if that is annoying for you. Maybe you are working between different projects and you don't want that to happen, then you can uncheck that here. Otherwise, each time you close this off and you double click on the engine now to open that up, then it's going to open up that previous project. Alright, so again, File, Open Project, and I'll just uncheck that. Click Cancel or click Open if you want, in case this does not work. And then you can just double click on here, and now it should load the project browser instead of the project, the previously loaded project. And as you can see, that is what happens. We now get the project browser instead, and this is now unchecked. So I just wanted to mention that you do have that as an option as well. Okay, so we looked at how we can create a project. We looked at the different options that you have. You have templates, we looked at giving the project a name. Then you can specify a location, and I talked about how to enable this always load last project on startup option. Sometimes a project may not show up in the project browser. You may have downloaded the project from the internet from an example. Now in that case, if the project does not show up in the project browser, you can click the browse button and then navigate to that location where the .uproject file is and then open that up. To wrap up this lecture, I'll bring back the launcher. And as with the engine, you can go with the particular engine, you can create a shortcut on the desktop. Now you can actually do that with your projects as well. So with Hello UE5, for example, right click on that, create a shortcut on the desktop. You may have a security thing pop up, you can just say yes on that. You'll notice you get a shortcut has been placed on your desktop. And that is over here now, so now you can just double click on that, and that is a shortcut for the uproject file, and that's going to open up my project now. As you can see, that is going to open up my Hello Unreal Engine 5 project. One final thing I'd like to mention, when we created this project, remember that we can choose the target hardware and all of that. Well, we can go and change that later on, as I mentioned, so I can click on settings and then I can select project settings and just dock that over here, for example. Then I can go to target hardware. You'll notice you have a couple of tabs here, target hardware and then pending changes. So if I change from desktop to mobile, for example, notice the pending changes. Also notice the settings are saved in a default engine.ini or .ini, and the changes will be applied when the project is reopened. And so you can restart editor, or you can apply later, for example. And then you have the changes as I mentioned. So with engine rendering, if you switch to mobile, then motion blur will be disabled, that is modified. Anti-aliasing method is none, and so forth, so all of those things. I'll just switch back to desktop. You can also switch here the quality to scalable, for example, and once more you will get what has been modified down here. Click apply later, and in that case I can restart the editor a bit later on, continue working for now, and I'll just close off here. Alright, so that was a quick introduction to how we can go about creating a new project in Unreal Engine 5, and with that we are going to wrap up this lecture. I'll see you next time.